what MJ Watson could have looked like in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. This is what Peter Parker could have looked like in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. And yes, indeed, this is what Miles Morales could have looked like in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. What's going on, everybody? My name is Blitzwinger, and ladies and gentlemen, yes indeed, the art of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is here, and it reveals a lot of very interesting things about the game, a lot of interesting choices that they made about the game, and we're going to dive into all of them here today. I got the book 250 plus pages later. I have tons of cool things to share with you guys. Of course, don't forget, if you do enjoy today's video, please leave a like. Thank you so very much for your support. And without further ado, let's dive on in. So let's kick things off with Peter Parker. And the interesting thing about Peter Parker is that it seems like one of the biggest decisions that they were making about the character for Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is what kind of haircut will he actually have? And interestingly enough, they explained that the reason why they chose not to go with a very fancy hairstyle or a longer hair in general is mostly due to the fact that they felt like that would not be congruent with his character. It would not fit his character. After all, why would Peter Parker be spending hours and hours on end trying to style his hair when he's busy trying to make sure his life doesn't fall apart and, you know, being Spider-Man? Now, for Miles Morales, it wasn't as simple as just the hair on top of the head, but also making a decision about whether or not he would have any hair on the face. And it's so fascinating how, honestly, I never put it two and two together, but a goatee really does age up the character substantially. I mean, Miles literally looks like a decade older when he has a goatee versus when he does not have a goatee. But let me know if any of these looks are preferred to the one that we ended up with. Let me know if you would have preferred to see Miles with any one of these other designs. Now, I have to be honest, for this next one, we're talking about MJ, and holy moly, she looks substantially different. Like, even the face model looks very different from concept art to what we ended up in the actual game. But I really do love getting a little bit of interesting technical knowledge from the art book about why they didn't give MJ a very, very long hairstyle. Because it's one of the things that I feel like we as gamers don't actually really think about, which is the technical side of things. And essentially the explanation in the art book is that anytime you give a character really long hair, especially if it's free flowing hair, it is very difficult to animate and it is very difficult to deal with from a technical standpoint. And so because of that, that's why they choose the shorter hairstyles, because it's easier to make sure that it looks proper and doesn't create all kinds of janky animations and moments within the game, which is so cool to find out about. And speaking of different haircuts and styles, we also have an insane shot of all the different looks that Black Cat could possibly have had for Marvel's Spider-Man 2. And I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, I actually think that they chose the perfect design. I think out of everything that is available on this page as possible looks that we could have ended up with, I don't really like almost any of them, with the exception of the one that we ended up getting in the actual game, which is, I guess, a massive W. Now, I can't say the same thing for my boy Mysterio. As much as I think that the design in the game is awesome, and it is, I genuinely do like the design for Mysterio in the game itself, I think that this image right here of Mysterio, as well as this one right here, just looks absolutely spectacular. I wish he would have been taken a little bit more seriously and had a bit more of a darker storyline, because holy moly, these two designs look absolutely spectacular. Another really cool detail that the book shares about the game with us, the players, is the fact that there was an idea for a much more extensive scene to take place after the events between Kraven and Venom. I mean, let's be honest, the Venom mission is absolutely incredible in Marvel's Spider-Man 2, arguably the best mission in the entire game, and obviously it culminates with the big giant boss fight between Kraven the Hunter and Venom, where, let's just say, things don't go very well for Kraven.
Thank you.
And of course, after that, we do see Harry Osborn Venom dash out of there and go run away towards the grave of his mother, whom he pays a visit. And of course, he afterwards declares the whole "I am going to be healing the world," or "we are going to be healing the world" line. That does look very cool. Well, initially they had plans where Harry would actually be attacked by Oscorp security while paying this visit to his mother, which then ultimately prompts him to start turning these security forces into symbiotes, which would have been the very first time in the story that we see him converting others into symbiotes, which I think would have actually worked really well and would have been really cool. Now, of course, what we ended up with in the game is the kind of more surprising transformation where Peter tracks down someone who he believes might be Harry Osborn and instead finds out that now Harry's begun infecting others with the symbiote. But I think that this idea from the concept art book is so much more clever and would have been so much more impactful to the idea that even the one place that Harry runs away to, where he tries to find a little bit of solace and guidance from his mother, or I guess from his mother's grave, he then once again is disturbed by someone who's trying to stop him, then prompting him to ultimately begin to heal the world, or at least I guess his version of it.
We're going to heal everyone.
And since we're on the topic of symbiote or symbiote enemies, another really interesting detail that the book shares is that originally all of the different symbiote monsters in the game were all black and white, similar to the color scheme of course, Venom. That was the style that they went with, but as they were testing the game and experimenting with it, they realized that the characters kind of blended in too much and they were too similar to one another, which then drew a lot of problems in terms of players being able to distinguish what type of enemies you're going up against in terms of what kind of attacks they will be delivering. So that's when the decision was made to add a little bit more color to the symbiotes themselves. And interestingly enough, this is something that I was not even aware of, but they have specific class types for each one of the different colorways. So we have the yellow symbiotes, which are known as the basic and the melee symbiotes. We then have the red and black design, where it's red over top of black. This is the range symbiote, followed by my personal favorite design of the bunch, which is the purple ones, and these are the rusher symbiotes. Then we have the black and red design for the grabber symbiotes, and then last but certainly not least, we have the big giants, the white giant symbiotes known as the behemoths. And interestingly enough, with this one, they pointed out that one of the struggles that they had during the design process was trying to make sure not to make these ones a little too epic because, well, they needed to be giant and menacing. However, they could not be more powerful or menacing looking than, of course, Venom. For this next portion of the video, I want to go a little bit more rapid fire with some more fun and interesting tidbits that the book reveals, but not delving quite into as many details. So, first and foremost, we have the really cool Easter egg being revealed inside the book that the offices that you travel through in the very opening level of Marvel's Spider-Man 2, when you are trying to run away and also battle Sandman and all his sand minions, you're actually going through an office design that looks very similar to Insomniac's real-life offices. This next detail is very wholesome, and I was very happy to find this out through the book. And that is, of course, Peter's house. Now, I know what you're saying. Hey, Blitz, what is so exciting about Peter's house? I mean, after all, except for the big giant mortgage payments that he has to make and the refrigerator that falls on him, what is so exciting about it? Well, the interesting thing to me is that it seems like the artists and the development team was really thinking of Peter's house as a representation, a physical representation of Aunt May, which I think is so clever. I mean, after all, obviously Peter loses Aunt May in Marvel's Spider-Man, and so this house is kind of everything that he has left as memories, as just an actual physical location of her, which I think is so cool. And it's also interesting because it really is the place that we see Peter oftentimes go to physically to contemplate things, to really think about things and kind of slow everything down and make major decisions happen. I mean, a lot of the key moments within the game happen in the house itself. Next, I wanted to talk about some of Kraven's hunters because there is some really cool details about them as well, including, remember this guy?
I didn't know there were bears in these woods. Okay, before we get down to business, there's something I have to tell you. I'm fresh out of honey.
Well, interestingly enough, within the Insomniac team, he actually has a nickname, which is the Berserker. And then there was another really interesting detail shared in the art book that I didn't pick up on when I played the game, the many hours that I have played of the game, and that is that all the crossbow hunters within the game actually wear hoods. Now, I did just talk about how Peter's house is sort of a physical manifestation of Aunt May and what she meant to him in his life. And interestingly enough, the book sort of does a very excellent job of explaining how that is also the case for the Emily May Foundation when it comes to Harry Osborn. Now, let me expand a little bit. Harry Osborn's whole motivation is to heal the world, and there's really no better place to represent that than the Emily May Foundation. Hence why, when it is destroyed within the game itself, he kind of resorts to the idea that the only way that he can accomplish his goal going forward is through the powers that the symbiote grants him, which I think is so clever, and that is something that I don't know why. I don't feel like the game really did a great job of actually communicating that to us as the players, but reading this book, I really did have kind of a aha moment where I was like, oh wow, that is actually a really interesting detail and something that I wish the game would have done a better job of actually communicating to us as players. Now, since we're on the topic of Harry Osborn, they also did share a bunch of really cool concept art images of the different outfits that Harry Osborn could have worn before he becomes Venom. So this is kind of the Agent Venom design for Harry, and I think it looks really cool. I think what we ended up with is probably the one that I like the best, but there are some really other exciting looks that they had here, including stuff that looked way more tactical in nature than what we ended up with. So I feel like we kind of got a nice balance between something that looks very super heroic, but at the same time has kind of a tactical feel as well. The book does also officially confirm the theory that we all as fans had, which essentially basically talks to the idea that when Peter has the symbiote suit and it is all kind of smooth and much less alien looking, that is when he is most in control and when he is kind of in the pilot seat. Whereas when you start to see the tendrils come up and the teeth and everything start to get a little bit more jagged, that is when he begins to lose control, and it's actually the symbiote beginning to be the quote-unquote operator. We also get an absolutely terrifying page dedicated to the Chameleon with his creepy mask designs. I am very much looking forward to battling Chameleon in hopefully an upcoming Marvel Spider-Man 2 DLC episode, but holy moly, let me know if you guys agree that most, if not every single one of these mask designs is absolutely terrifying. This was a really cool Easter egg that I did not pick up on when I played the game originally, but the art book points out that if you go and look through the different Daily Bugle tabloids, you'll notice that the newspapers will actually update as the story progresses. How cool is that? This next detail is probably one of the ones that I am most bummed out about when it comes to the art book itself, because we get a reveal of an epic fight scene between Miles Morales and Kraven, and they actually do say that at least initially in early concepts, they had an idea of this battle playing out. And that would then obviously lead to the capture of Miles Morales by Kraven. I think this would have been something that would have been really cool to include in the game. Instead of what we got, I think a boss fight between Kraven and Miles would have been absolutely fantastic, but unfortunately, this is something that did not make it into the final game. Now, something that did make it into the game is, of course, MJ turning into a symbiote, or more specifically, into Scream. And this is apparently something that they've had in mind for quite a while now, since the very early stages of development for Marvel Spider-Man 2. However, the thing that is absolutely bananas, I mean, the design that we end up with is okay. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Yes, there's a lot of jokes about it looking like a bunch of mustard and ketchup smashed together. But when you look at some of the designs that they came up with as alternatives, holy moly, some of these are straight up nightmare fuel. I mean, looks absolutely terrifying. And I low-key kind of wish that we would have ended up with this design instead of what we got. Speaking of the designs that we got, this next one is probably going to be controversial, and that is the Miles Morales evolved suit. So a couple of interesting details about the evolved suit is that apparently this suit was actually completed before they knew that they were going to be doing a collaboration with Adidas. once the collaboration came together, they basically swapped the shoe design that they had already agreed upon. Instead, he then wore the brand new Adidas Ultra 4D Mid-Evolve shoes. Yeah, clearly you can probably tell I don't know a whole lot about shoes. But what is interesting about the Evolve suit is just how varied the designs were. I mean, if you look at some of these other ones that they had in mind, I honestly kind of like some of the ones that are mostly blue. I feel like it really would make Miles stand out compared to the Peter design, which seems to be what they were going for as far as trying to make his outfit, his new Evolved suit, be very different than, quote unquote, as they say in the actual book, a hand-me-down from Peter Parker. And so because of that, I think that if you want to go in that direction, if you want to make it distinctly different in terms of colorway even, or design overall, I think the idea of leaning into the kind of, bioluminescent blue that the Venom Shock abilities are, I think would work really well for Miles. Another really cool detail is actually about Martin Lee, where they explain why now his inner demon actually features a bunch of chains and pins and things that look like they're trying to almost like contain the demon. And the idea there is to visually represent that Martin Lee now has control over the inner demon. He has now exercised some of his quote unquote inner demons, and therefore he has gained control over this monster that resides within him. And finally, for all of you science nerds, you'll probably find it really cool that the Hive Mind design that appears within Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is actually inspired by the neural pathway designs, and I guess just the way that the neural pathways appear inside a human brain. So there you go, a lot of really cool and exciting tidbits revealed within the art of Marvel's Spider-Man 2. Let me know what you found to be interesting from all the information I shared here today. Of course, guys, don't forget to take a quick moment and leave a like. Thank you so very much for all of your continued support. And in addition to that, if you'd like to learn how to play another Marvel game that is actually coming up in just a couple of weeks from now, and that would be Marvel Rivals, check out the video you're currently seeing on your screen. Thanks a lot for watching, and I'll, of course, hopefully catch you guys here on the next one. Peace out. See you later, alligators. Bye-bye, everybody.